Yeah, I mean that makes sense to me. Actually, before Dom, I pass it off to you. Let me just, for the sake of time, kind of loop in the next story, which I think actually it relates to what we're talking about heavily. So, this story, it's about a secret RCMP report, secret in quotes because it was apparently leaked or something. But basically, it warned that Canadians might revolt once they realize how broke they are, or at least that's one interpretation of it. Again, like people can interpret it different ways, but here's what it said specifically. Okay, so the coming period of recession will accelerate the decline in living standards that the younger generations have already witnessed compared to earlier generations. So that's a concerning quote. And at one point in the report, it blatantly says, for example, many Canadians under 35 are unlikely ever to be able to buy a place to live. So they really weren't mincing words. Again, I don't think this report was meant to really go out to the public. So this was just RCMP is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. It's kind of like the FBI equivalent, but in Canada, it's like the federal police. So yeah, I mean, this RCMP report really didn't hold back. It literally just says that if you're under 35, if you're just making an average income, you're unlikely to ever be able to buy a place to live. So, what do you guys think of that? Just plainly, what's your reaction? Because I was like, I wouldn't say I was shocked, like, because it wasn't surprising, because it was just saying a truth that everybody already kind of knows. But it's another thing to maybe just of how in your face it was, right? To like hear it from the RCMP themselves. So yeah, I mean, what do you guys think though? Like, what's your initial reaction?
Yeah, I guess I agree with you. It is pretty surprising that the RCMP has made a comment about this and saying you're under 35, you're pretty much screwed, which is, I guess, like a reality for many Canadians. On the flip side, if you want to live in Regina or Saskatoon, you could possibly afford a house there, but at your own expense of like living in Saskatoon or Regina, right? That's the caveat. And if you want to live in a major city like Vancouver, Toronto, I guess Calgary on the come up to Montreal, these houses are getting solely expensive. Tristan and I do live in Calgary, and you can kind of see like things are getting more expensive. And when I'm in a position to maybe buy a house, like I don't know if I'd move back to Ontario, stay here, who knows? But I'd probably have to stick with the outer towns like there's like Airdrie, there's Okotoks, there's Cochrane, and then that would be the option at that point, as the market's pretty crazy here too. So, side note.
Yeah, so as I guess the local homeowner in the crew, um I will say that it's pretty difficult to get a house for a reasonable amount. In and that and you know obviously we I live in Calgary, so um it's a little bit cheaper than Ontario. But from taking the perspective of like, if you wanted to live in Ontario and you were under 35, good luck. Like the houses are so expensive that you either need to basically sell your soul to the bank to have to get a mortgage where you're paying humongous amounts of money a month, and then you own something, but you basically live to pay your mortgage, or you need someone to give you a house. And neither of those scenarios is a particularly efficient way to manage home ownership, right? So, or well, I guess the third option is just never own a house ever because you can never afford one. And because of the fact that things are getting worse rather than better, it's going to continue to see that divergence of the house price increasing as our currency inflates and our people are even less able to afford the housing. I've heard lots of people talk about how there has to be a housing bubble crash. How? Like, explain to me how the housing market crashes, because I can't see a scenario where the housing market crashes because of the fact that we've got so many people coming in, we've got such a humongous amount of demand and such a unreasonable amount of supply that there's no way that we're going to ever rejoin an equilibrium in which the housing is equalized at a price of something that is somewhat reasonable. It just can't happen without a massive increase in supply. And I think the young people are realizing that this is their future. And I think that as time goes on, they may become more and more disillusioned with the system. And I think that's what the RCMP is worried about. After the trucker rally, I think that they saw that, Canadians are willing to stand up about things that they believe in. And well, I'm not necessarily pro or not necessarily stating a stake in that rally. The fact that rally happened at all shows that Canadians are willing to do something. And I could definitely see a scenario where a rally about housing affordability kicks in, and that rally gets a little more aggressive than the truckers were, because people, I think, are a lot more angry. And honestly, if you have nothing to look forward to, you have no real ability to have a future, you also have nothing to lose, which makes you a lot more dangerous. That makes sense. So I'm not surprised that this is something they're considering.
Yeah, what bothers me the most is just kind of the unfairness of it all. And I think I might have said this in a previous episode, so knock me for being a broken record here, but I just, like, when I walk through, let's say, a rich neighborhood in downtown Toronto, or not even downtown Toronto, but just, like the suburbs of Toronto, like Aurora or somewhere like that, York region, right, which is like the greater Toronto area. Like, all of those houses, every single one, when you walk down this street, is multi-million dollars, right? At least 1 million, probably $2 or $3 million each, if they're, fully detached, 3,000 square feet, blah, 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 right? And the people that have those houses, they're all rich, right? And they're all rich because they bought the house like back when it was really cheap. And they bought the house back in, I don't know, the 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever, right? And they just sat on it. And then the house went up much faster than the inflation in other things. And then that's how they became rich. So it's either that or they're all Warren Buffetts, right? Every single one of them, they got rich because they like picked the best stocks, and then they diversified their portfolios, and then they picked the most innovative companies. They found the Tesla and the Apple and the Googles of their day, and then they got rich, which is, unlikely. Maybe a couple of them got their money that way, but most of them probably just worked a regular job, and then that was enough for them to buy a 3,000 square foot house back in 1960, right? And the same thing is just not possible for anyone under 35, right? It's just not. So like, that's just an inherent unfairness that I think that we should do something to address, right? And I don't think that that's a controversial thought at all, but like, what should we do? Maybe that's like a conversation for another day, but I can tell you what we should not do, which is what we're doing now, which is, just printing money, out of control government spending. But we've had that conversation multiple times, so I'm not gonna repeat everything again. But yeah, that's all I have to say on this story.